I still remember the smell of antiseptic the moment I stepped into the hospital that morning. It was cold, but not the kind of cold you feel on your skin. It was deeper, quiet, sterile, and unsettling. Like the hallway itself knew something I didn't. I had been sick for weeks, fatigue that didn't go away, bruises showing up on my arms without reason, and headaches that came like thunder in a clear sky. I kept brushing it off. It's stress, I'd say. I've been working too much. But deep down, a whisper in my chest told me something wasn't right. My name was called. Room 4. The nurse smiled politely, but I could tell it was forced, like she was trying to soften something. That was the first sign. I sat down across from the doctor. His eyes didn't meet mine right away. He looked at the folder on his desk like it was too heavy to lift. And then he said it. Your blood work came back. We found something abnormal. Time slowed. The next words came like a foreign language. White blood cell count. Bone marrow. Oncology referral. Then he said the word. Leukemia. I blinked. I heard him, but I didn't hear him. I wasn't ready. At 29, you don't think about cancer. You think about bills, promotions, weddings, kids someday. Not hospitals. Not chemo. Not life or death. I asked, are you sure? He nodded gently. We're going to run more tests. But yes. And just like that, everything shifted. I walked out of that hospital feeling like the world had changed, but no one else noticed. People laughed in the parking lot. A child ran by eating ice cream. The sun still shined. And I just stood there, holding a diagnosis that felt like it would crush me. The next few days were a blur. Family meetings, tears, internet searches I shouldn't have done. But something strange happened too. People showed up. My quiet friend from church brought food. My sister flew in from another state. My neighbor, who I barely spoke to, left flowers and a note that said, you're stronger than this. And slowly, I realized something. Yes, I had cancer, but I wasn't the diagnosis. I was still me. A daughter, a sister, a woman who loved to paint and write and drink too much tea. I wasn't just a patient. I was a person who now had a mountain to climb, but I wasn't climbing it alone. The treatment started a week later. It was hard. I lost my hair, my energy, my pride. But I also found something, resilience. It didn't come all at once. It showed up in small moments, when I made a nurse laugh, when I held hands with another patient during chemo, when I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't cry. The day I was diagnosed felt like the end. But now I know it was the beginning. Not of death, but of strength, of perspective, and of learning what truly matters. I'm still here. And every day I'm learning that even in the darkest places, like hospital rooms and whispered diagnoses, there's still light. There's still life. There's still love. And sometimes, the most painful days are the ones that show us who we really are. They told me the worst would be the inner experience of battling illness while discovering strength, hope, and meaning. They told me the worst would be the treatment. They were wrong. The worst was the silence. That long, cold silence between the diagnosis and the beginning of the fight. When your life splits in two, before cancer and after cancer, and you're left alone in that quiet space trying to understand who you are now. People meant well. They'd say things like, stay strong. You've got this. God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. But sometimes, I didn't want to be strong. Sometimes I wanted to break down and cry without feeling guilty. Sometimes I wanted to scream and ask why me. And I did. More than once. But somewhere between the 4 drips and the sleepless nights, I realized something. Cancer could change my body, but it didn't have to change my soul. The chemo came in cycles. Each round took more from me. My hair fell out in clumps. I'd wake up with it on the pillow, in the shower drain, on my clothes. I stood in front of the mirror one day and ran my fingers through the last strands, watching them fall like autumn leaves. That day, I shaved it all off, and as strange as it sounds, I felt free, like I had taken back a bit of control in a world where everything else felt decided for me. The nausea was brutal. The fatigue was like carrying a mountain on my back. But in the midst of all that, little moments began to matter more. A nurse who always warmed my blanket before placing it over me. The quiet lady in the next chemo chair, who brought crossword puzzles. The janitor who whistled gospel songs as he cleaned, like he was holding joy in his pocket. The doctor who called me champ every time he walked in, even when I didn't feel like one. One evening, after a particularly rough treatment, I sat outside the hospital bald, pale, tired beyond belief, and watched the sunset. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel afraid. I just felt alive. It hit me then, I may never be who I was before, but maybe I wasn't supposed to be. This journey, this illness, this pain, it was doing something unexpected. It was refining me. I began to write again. Short poems, letters to God, notes to my future self. I started journaling my thoughts during treatments, and eventually, those thoughts became stories. My story, and stories of others like me. There was a little boy I met in the children's oncology ward. His name was Toby, just 6 years old, diagnosed with a brain tumor, but he had the joy of 10 sons in his heart. Every time I saw him, he was coloring, always with bright yellows and blues. I asked him once, why don't you use darker colors? He smiled and said, because I don't like sad colors. I'm not sick in my heart, just in my head. That moment stayed with me. It reminded me that even when your body is breaking, your spirit can still dance. Your soul can still shine. I won't lie to you. Some days are still hard. The fear doesn't disappear overnight. The follow-up tests, the waiting rooms, the small coughs that make you wonder, is it back? But something's changed. I'm not living in fear anymore. I'm living in purpose. Cancer was a storm I never asked for, but it taught me things calm weather never could. It taught me to love deeper, to forgive faster, to slow down and breathe in the moment, to be kind to strangers, because everyone's fighting something invisible. They said the diagnosis was the beginning of the end, but they were wrong. It was the beginning of a deeper, more meaningful life. And as I sit here now, writing this for you, I hope my story reminds someone out there that your diagnosis isn't your identity. You are more than the pain, the prognosis, the treatment. You are a story still being written, a whisper of strength in a loud, chaotic world. You are hope wrapped in skin, walking through fire, and choosing to keep going. And that is more powerful than any disease. It had been 8 months since I first heard the word that changed my life. Leukemia. 8 months of treatments, hospital visits, painful nights, kind strangers, and quiet prayers. 8 months of feeling like I was both breaking and being rebuilt at the same time. And then one day, during a routine visit, the doctor looked at me and said something I wasn't expecting to hear just yet. Your body is responding better than we hoped. You're in remission. Remission. The word tasted strange in my mouth, like something too fragile to believe, but too sacred to ignore. I nodded, smiled weakly, and whispered thank you. But as I walked out of the hospital that day, something surprising happened. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt lost. You see, no one tells you that sometimes the hardest part comes after the fight. When everyone else breathes a sigh of relief, but you're still holding your breath. When your friends say it's over, but your body remembers every needle, every scan, every moment you thought you might not make it. Healing doesn't come all at once. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. I had hair again, but I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. I could walk without help, but I carried a weight no one could see. I was alive, but I didn't know how to start living again. So I started small. I took slow walks at sunrise, reminding myself that the world was still beautiful. I wrote letters I never sent to the old me, to the fear, to God. I started seeing a counselor who helped me give names to the emotions I'd buried. Guilt, grief, gratitude, anger, hope. I spoke to other survivors, each one carrying a scar, a lesson, a story. One of them told me something I'll never forget: the goal isn't to go back to who you were, it's to become who you were always meant to be. That sentence stayed with me, because deep down, I knew she was right. I began volunteering at the same hospital where I had been treated. Not as a nurse, not as a doctor, but as a listener. A quiet voice in the waiting room, a warm presence by the bedside, a reminder that no one is alone in this. I met patients just starting their journey, afraid, confused, angry. And I told them, gently, I don't know what your story will be, but I know there's life after diagnosis. And it can be beautiful. I started sharing my journal entries online, slowly, anonymously. To my surprise, strangers responded with messages like, "This helped me feel seen. You gave me hope today." And I realized something I wish someone had told me sooner. Healing is not just about surviving, it's about transforming. I am no longer afraid of the word cancer. I am no longer ashamed of the scars. I am no longer rushing to go back to the life I had before, because now, I'm building something new. I laugh louder, cry softer, love deeper. I forgive faster, listen better, live slower. And I don't take a single breath for granted. They say life gives you two birthdays: the day you're born, and the day you realize why. Maybe, just maybe, this was my second one. Not because I beat the illness, but because I discovered something greater, that broken people can still shine, that stories of pain can become stories of purpose, and that healing often begins from within. So if you're listening to this right now, and you're in the middle of your storm, please remember you are not alone. You are not just a diagnosis. You are still becoming, and you are deeply, wonderfully, still here. Thank you for listening to this journey on the Hospital Whisperer. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope. And remember, even in the silence of a hospital room, your voice and your story still matters.